Hi, this is Lori with God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee, and I am so looking forward to this episode about Scott Gearen. And just to give you an idea, I want to share my screen here. Okay, there we go. There we go. So as you can see, Scott, pararescue man, stationed at RAF Woodbridge, which is part of the RAF Bentwaters RAF Woodbridge, in 1980. Very, very exciting. He's also had an incredible story. He's an inspirational speaker. I'm so looking forward to having him. And so we look forward to him in a few seconds. Hello, this is Lori Rayfelt with Donna Rayfelt Schreiber and our special guest, Scott Gearen today. Larry could not make it today due to he's living in Liverpool and he has a bad, they have a heat wave and it's no air conditioning. So he's in rough shape and he's got a really bad headache. But we do look forward to him being at the next one. However, he did ask a question for me to ask Scott. So I will ask Scott after Donna does her thing, which is giving us a little prayer. This is the God part of God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee. Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Father God. We just thank you, Lord. We are just so grateful that God, that you have Scott here today. It's a miracle for what he went through, Lord, that you have a purpose for his life, Lord. And we are just so thankful and grateful to hear this story of, Lord, that you are, God, that you can do the impossible, because that was a miracle. So, Father God, we just thank you, Lord. We just pray, Lord, that today, everyone who's watching this, their eyes will be opened, their hearts will be opened, just to understand that there is God in the heavens who is for us, teaching us, guiding us, directing our path, and that nothing is wasted fruit. Everything we go through, it bears good fruit. So I pray blessings over Scott, tremendous blessings, and over his life, his family, his finances, everything that is attached to him. So Father God, we thank you. We are honored to have him here to share his story, Lord, and we just seal these prayers in Jesus' almighty precious name. Amen.
Amen. That's a big amen.
Amen.
Well, Scott, I'd like to go ahead and share what Larry had written, because he's, do you know Larry Warren?
Was he on the previous podcast when we were together with the Woodbridge group?
No, that was actually Doc Rhodes. That was another.
Okay.
That was a law enforcement guy I worked with, but the Larry Warren actually got to RAF Bentwaters in December of 1980 as a security police person, and when he left, he was only there for about 5-6 months, and he left, and a few years later, I think 1983, he actually got the word out about what happened at RAF Bentwaters, because he was one of the airmen that was out in the field with Colonel Halt and all those guys. But he, let me see if I could find what his question here. Let me see.
Yeah, I know of him. I know who he is because of these things. Our paths may have crossed at Woodbridge and Bentwaters, but I don't recall that happening unless I was in trouble.
You were in trouble?
Young dumb PJ over there.
Oh my God, you guys were wild. That's a whole different culture. We actually loved you guys though, because you guys were always like in really super top shape, as you are now. And a lot of the women in dormitories wanted to date you guys.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I know about that. I lived in the dormitory. I'm like, no. Actually, I think we had one PJ. I wish I remembered his name, because he was a real cutie, but he got really drunk and he was on the landing, on the stairwell landing, passed out at the women's dormitory. And yeah, good times.
Yeah,
But
back in those days, you were not allowed to be like near the women's dormitories after like 6 o'clock p.m. or something.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that was true. And I think unless you signed in, but I probably not.
Now they have adjoining rooms.
I know. What the heck? What's that about? I'm
Share a
trying to find.
bathroom.
Yeah, I'm trying to find his notification. If not, I think I can remember it. A lot of folks out, we call them trolls and whatnot, but there are a lot of people that have been saying that the UFO sightings that occurred in December or throughout the time was mainly the pararescue guys were doing a hoax or whatever. People were saying, "Oh no," or it was they had that capsule, and that old what was it? It was an astronaut capsule, and they said that you guys used those, and he said no. Larry said no, we did. They did not use those capsules in 1980. And he wanted you to corroborate to say, did you use that capsule? Did you guys fly with it?
He's correct. We trained on that mission in the North Sea to continue to keep those skills up because we did support NASA at different times, but we were not using a capsule for training. We were jumping. We would put some type of marker in the water, and that would simulate our capsule, and then we would fly around and do a moving target pattern, which is what it was called, because it's not like your target is on the land and it's not moving. When it's in the ocean, it's moving with waves and currents and winds. So you have a special pattern that the aircraft will fly to put you out to make sure you're downwind and downdrift of the target. But we were not using the capsules. Like I've seen them in some of the shows on TV and whatnot talking about that. But we weren't using the capsule there. We would support NASA.
I didn't know either way. So now you just cleared that up, because I know what I saw couldn't move like the way the capsule could move. Now Donna, just to give you an idea of what Scott went through when he talks about diving into the North Sea. The North Sea.
I saw the video.
Okay, so it's very, very, no, I'm trying to give you an idea of the North Sea, though. I don't know if that was in the video. He would jump into this water that was dark black. And then it was scary as all hell. And they did it at night, about 11, 12 o'clock at night, in December and January, where they had the freaking coldest winters there when we were there. And I would be on a warm bus looking out. They would drop some lights, and these guys were bold enough to jump on in and do their thing. But it was cold and scary. I mean, I don't know. Okay. Do you feel like putting a sweater on now because it's so cold?
Yeah, while I was there, I think it was in that time frame. I don't know if it was the December time frame. Let's see, Jim, I'm trying to think. Might have been a little bit further in the summer, but we did lose one of the PJs. I don't know if you were there. Mark Crockford, he did drown on a jump in the North Sea when we were doing training out there.
What month about was that? Was that in December?
No, it may not have been in December. It may have been, it may have been more in the summer months.
Oh, wow. I didn't hear anything about that.
I have a question. So, what possessed you to even go into such a dangerous field, Scott? Did you have like a thrill seeker mentality at that age, or what would possess somebody to do that? It's like being a Navy SEAL. I don't know anybody that has that kind of
it's kind of hard to just say one particular thing is like, oh, this is it and I'm going to go do it. Certainly the lure of jumping out of airplanes had always been, oh, I want to jump out of an airplane someday. And I saw that was an option with that job, pararescue. And then I looked into it when I was at the recruiter's office, and he showed me a video, and I saw a short clip of a guy jump out of a C-130 wearing a ton of gear and landed in the ocean. So I stopped the video right there and said, okay, that's it. Yep, that's what I want to do. And so then that started the chain of events. And, it was excitement, as guys were coming out of Vietnam at that time, and the rescue aspect of it, and just that mission to want to go in there and be a part of that team was just the driving force to do it.
Yeah, these guys were ripped. These guys, they were actually at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. The beginning of their technical school was down there. Now, what they carried, how much of that rope, if you had to go anywhere by yourself, they had to wear a rope around their shoulders. Was that like 20, 30 pounds or something?
The rope was not the heavy one. There was you had to, and it was teaching you teamwork. You had to take care of it, and you would have somebody have the kit bag that you would keep the rope in, and then if you ever had to go and run somewhere on the base, you would get in formation. You would take the rope out of the bag, and everybody would line up on either side of it, and then you would run holding the rope. But there was a railroad rail. It was set solid iron. That was pretty heavy. There was a power line pole. I obviously didn't run as around the base as far with those items, but it was just one of those things to teach you teamwork.
Yeah, but that is so funny, because that was the one thing that I remember is at Lackland, seeing a guy running by himself with a rope around his shoulders. And they had to run. They could not walk anywhere. They had to run wherever they went. I mean, that was the rule. So you never really got a chance to say, hey, you, the PJ, tell me what's going on. Yeah. And your school went on for a couple of years, because you had to go to different bases to do, did you go to Iceland and do the, I guess, working with ice? Climbing on with ice?
Not at that time. Iceland was a base where we had a detachment from the 67th that we would go to and support. They had the H3s. We would fly up there on a weekly rotation basis with the 130s, because we could air refuel over the ocean. But at that time, when I went through, training was about 18 months long. And you went through the schools. You went through, like you said, Lackland, and you went through that introduction course, and then you went through the Army, the scuba schools, the jump schools, and then Air Force survival schools. And then you ended up at Kirtland Air Force Base for the remainder of that time to finish it up with more parachute jumping, more medical training, field tactics, weapons training, and aircrew stuff. And then at that time, they did not require us to have a paramedic rating, national, certified rating as a paramedic, but they do now, and it has been there probably for the last 20, 30 years that PJs have had to maintain a national certification as a paramedic, just like a civilian would. Wow. And so now that's almost a year to the training. It's very intensive part of the training, but they all come out of there with a full paramedic rating.
Wow. So do you have any memory of that day, or is it kind of like blocked out?
You're talking about when he jumped?
When he fell.
Yeah, if she's wanting to know. I shared a video with Donna and Larry about what happened to you, and also photos from your book of the hiding in plain sight. Could you share with us about that day when you?
Sure. Sure. So it's like you asked Donna about a memory. So the memory of the actual hitting the ground, that's repressed. I've tried to remember it. I don't remember that. And I explain it similar to two memories. I have more of a conscious memory and an unconscious memory. My conscious memory being that where I was on an alert rotation. I was with a SEAL team stationed in Virginia, and we were out for a training parachute jump. And so I remember getting ready for the jump. I remember driving to the drop zone, stopping to get coffee and healthy donuts and stuff like that. And then getting to the drop zone and, getting ready for it, getting on the helicopter. We were on a Marine CH-46. And I remember being one quick memory inside the helicopter and looking out of a window. And then the next part of that conscious memory is about 3 or 4 days later in the hospital, where I'm realizing that I've been injured. And then it's like realizing that I've been injured, and then not really knowing the extent of my injuries, just know that I've been injured severely and there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm in the best hands possible. So it's just like, hey, I don't have to worry. I'm going to heal, and I'm going to get back to my job one day. And so and then it went on from there for the next 18 months. So in between those two times, the jump and becoming aware of the injury, is the unconscious part of it, subconscious maybe, where I knew that I was injured. I could see I was leaving my body. I never felt any pain. I could see my crumpled body there. I could see the guys around it that were taking care of me. But it was like I was my consciousness, and I was my soul. I was leaving. I wasn't walking. I wasn't running. I think there's a transition period where I still felt like I was in my body, sort of like I was thinking, okay, I look left, I look right, or over this shoulder or that shoulder, but I really wasn't in my body, but it felt like that. But I was moving away from it, and I didn't feel any pain. It was a very loving, peaceful feeling. And I've always heard people say the white light, and they could see the light. Well, I didn't so much see the white light. I was surrounded, completely engulfed with a light, and it was kind of a softer, like a 40-watt light that's not real bright, but it was just engulfing me, and I feel that was energy, and it was love. I just felt that. Wow. But then over in another area, again, looking up and over my shoulder area, was a very, very, very bright area. And I described that as being like 100-watt light bulb, because of the difference from what was surrounded me to what I was seeing. And in that light were 3 figures. And the light was so bright, I couldn't see who it was. I just knew that there was 3 figures there, whether they were standing there, floating, or whatever. They were just there. And we were communicating. I knew somehow that they were there to greet me, and I was going to them, and I was traveling through time and space, or however that is. And my consciousness was moving to them, and I was right almost to the point where I was going to see who it was. And I was even thinking, I'm going to see who this is. And very clearly and very distinctly, I heard a voice that said, "It's time to go now." And I said, "God, I'm not ready to go yet," and turned my head away from that bright light. And that was the last thing I remember in the subconscious part of it, the unconscious part of the memory.
That is incredible.
So Scott, you knew Jesus prior to this? Did you have a relationship with God, or no?
I would say yes. I mean, I think sometimes, people don't have that relationship with God until they're in a crisis, and then they pray and say, "Oh God, please let me do this. Please let this happen." And there were certainly times in my life when those things would happen, and for whatever reason. But I grew up with, the Old Testament Bible stories, and my mom taking me to church. So those were things that were in my life. At one point, I was baptized. I went to church, not every Sunday, but that was my belief that, God is real, and Jesus was his son. So certainly those were beliefs that I had in my mental capacity.
Yeah, I just say that because my experience with God was my son overdosed, and they told me he was brain dead, and they were going to pull the plug because he was an organ donor. And I had a moment where I asked God, "What do I do?" And I felt he, right in my spirit, he said, "Pray. He needs every prayer." So I did, and then he said, "Go on Facebook. I want you to." He was really coming at me like somebody was pointing their finger in my face, and like, really, pray incessantly, and you ask everyone that has a relationship to pray because your kid is fighting for his life, right? Which I did. And then when my son miraculously came out of this coma, because they said his brain was craters, it was a heroin overdose, and he was without oxygen for like 15 hours. So there was no way he was going to be a vegetable if he did survive. But he came back 100% like yourself. It was like coming back from the dead. And I asked him, "Do you remember anything?" And he said, "I felt like I was in water, like in the middle of the ocean." And he felt these like demons coming around him saying, "We're taking you to hell. You're coming with us." And he heard like somebody from the heavens say, "Get your hands off. His fate is not determined yet. He is in international waters." In other words, he's in international waters. You can't tell. And I cannot believe that first, I can't believe that my son came back like yourself, just hearing your story. That's God's hand, and I can't even imagine the call on your life is tremendous, as I feel like it is with my son. It's trying to get the message out that God is very much real, because most people don't even believe he is real or exists. But when you have a God encounter like yours, when you saw three beings, I believe that was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, enraptured in that light, and they definitely know you.
The comment you just made, God is real. So I always felt like, you wonder, well, why did I survive? People fall off a step or fall off a ladder and don't survive. And, I jump out at 13,000 feet and have a problem with my parachute not opening at 3,000 feet and fall the rest of the way, and hit the ground 100 miles an hour and survive. How, why? And those are kind of things I've wondered and try to remember, but I always felt like part of the reason I survived was to share my story and tell people God is real. And so, I haven't wrote a book about it. I haven't, other than just sharing and one-on-ones and stories like this and talks with people. But also, I don't know if you've heard of Freedom Sings USA, which is a nonprofit organization, and they have songwriters and singers, and they hook them up through Nashville and other songwriters there. But a pararescueman that was injured and got out of the Air Force a few years ago, his name's Donovan Chapman, and so he was with Freedom Sings, and he and Don Goodman and myself and a couple of other people with Freedom Sings were together to write that story, God is Real, into a song. So the name of the song is actually God is Real, and it's on Freedom Sings USA and can be downloaded from them. It's also on their first album, and it's
I'm
awesome.
gonna check it
It's
out.
awesome.
I am gonna check it out because this podcast has gone to a different level that is amazing, incredible, especially both of you sharing your stories. I mean, it's talk about synchronicity in action and talking about, you know, what's there. It's
and you know, Donna, what you're saying about prayers, and certainly I believe that prayer is powerful and that it works. And there's also choices. You know, we all make choices in life, and they have consequences and impacts, you know, the next day, the next week, 20, 30 years from now. But sometimes people don't have the choice to come back. You know, there may be something that's so traumatic, or they just, it's God has called them, and they're not coming back. But sometimes you have a choice, and I felt like I had a choice. Your son obviously was able to come back. The prayers, he wanted to come back, and he made that choice. It's, you know, God has given you the opportunity there with that choice. And anyway, their choices is kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, and you know what else I just wanted to say too is because when I had this God encounter, and I was Catholic my whole life. This happened when I was like in my early 50s. And when that happened, when I felt like I heard God literally talking to me and, you know, putting it on Facebook, I was actually driving somebody to the airport. I had a client in the back, and I'm like, oof, don't really want to do that because it's kind of like a personal thing. And who wants to put book your kid's a heroin addict? But I knew it was God. And I was like, you know, I'm going to just obey. I'm doing it. So way after I dropped the client off, I started turning around and I started thinking about what I just witnessed, what I experienced. God saying, pray incessantly. No, you need to go on Facebook and this whole thing. And then I'm thinking like, why the heck does God want me to put this on Facebook? Because, you know, bad news travels fast. It's going to go viral. And then I have this epiphany and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I think God wants an audience. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, and how great is our God? Not only is he going to heal them, but he's going to take the addiction off. Like I just processed it that way. And I believed it. And when a couple of minutes later, my husband called me. My son was in the hospital. They had cut off his clothes and he was heart failure, kidney failure. He was without oxygen for so long that all the proteins in his body was shutting down. Everything was just shutting down. It was all negative. And my husband didn't know God in the same way. You know, he was Catholic too, and God was way up in the sky. Not really. He's an engineer, so they're very logical. They're not like spiritual people. And he called me to give me like, you know, 2 lungs are collapsed now and more bad news. And he heard like I sounded upbeat, and he's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I told him, I said, "You know, I kind of had this God encounter, and I know he's going to be okay." And my husband got off the phone thinking I got a kid dead in the hospital and my wife had a psychotic break. He thought I went off the deep end, you know. But honestly, that journey, God kind of put me in this God bubble because I just knew God was going to heal him. And I had moments, it was 4 months time that, you know, he went from brain dead, never walk or talk again. They released him from the hospital, like saying he's going to be a vegetable the rest of his life, a ward of the state. And but he opened his eyes and that was it. You could have stuck a pen in his eyes and he wouldn't have reacted. So he was really like not there. And they took him to this nursing home, and within a month, he spoke. It was on Mother's Day, and he said, "Happy Mother's Day. I love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day." And it was like, oh my gosh. I go, "How are you okay?" He says, "I have a pinched nerve in my neck." And I was like, oh God, there's intelligence there. Because they were telling me, major, you know, this is your brain on drugs, like, you know, fried eggs. They said he had craters. There's no way he could walk or talk. It was that severe. And here he's talking with intelligence. And within a month, they started working on his body. He had, he was literally paralyzed, and slowly they're moving him. Next, with it, in a matter of 4 months, they checked him out and they said, you can expect a complete and full recovery. I mean,
Wow.
And have a new MRI done, and the MRI still said he should be brain dead, that there's no way he could walk or talk. He still has the same craters and everything. It's a miracle that he is back in the world, went back to college, and is a functioning human being at this point. So that was a game changer for me, and that's when I became an alien. Okay, God alien. I became an alien because I knew God was real, and God never, as long as I obeyed, God kept on talking to me and telling me things, and putting me in situations where God wanted me to tell somebody something, and it changed my whole life. Changed my life for sure.
It was incredible. Amen. Yeah, I know several months before he had that, this is just from my perspective, before he had that overdose, Donna wrote this thing on Facebook, and it was long, and I was reading it, and it's like my whole mouth was agape, like, I can't believe she's writing this, because Donna is very private, and she'll share some stuff, but not like what she was sharing, and it just blew me away. And you could almost feel it with your heart what she was saying. And then she kept saying, I need prayers, we need prayers, we need a miracle, we need a miracle. And I thought to myself, when I was a little girl, I went to Lourdes, France, and with my mom and my older sister, Chris, and that's a place where they do a lot of miracles. And so I figured, if any place can do miracles by the thousands of people, it's Lourdes in France. So I went several months before that. I was metal detecting, and I came upon it looked like a Catholic medal. It was like kind of like a saint medal, except it had a different symbol on it. And I had no idea what it was, but it was made of silver. So I stuck it it was in my car. And when I went on to the Lourdes website, it was a symbol of miracles. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I got to get this medal over to Donna. I got to, it was almost as if there was a connection that God was saying, yes, we're going to have these miracles are going to happen. And, and I didn't know, but I was putting all my energy into it the way Donna is, because the thought of losing my nephew was just too unbearable. And, yeah, it was just phenomenal, the synchronicity that was happening at that period of time. And then seeing him now, he's like, he's funny, charming, just a laid back, really great guy. And, anyway, but I'm thinking that, in your case, did your mom and dad come visit you when you were in the hospital? And
my mom did. My dad had passed already. And he served in the Navy on submarines, which were lined with asbestos. So, back in the 70s, mesothelioma was, thousands of sailors a day were dying. You can look back and they weren't saying, oh, he had mesothelioma from asbestos, but, 42 years old and your body's full of cancer from no other reason than being in the Navy.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
Yeah, our dad was in the Navy too. So I got seasick on the ferry, so the Navy was not my option. Personally, I would have rather have been a PJ, but they didn't have it open for women. But
it is now.
Yeah. How many women do they have in it now? One?
None yet. Well, that's the one female that's in there now is in the special tactics officer program. So, and there's different lanes in there for them.
Yeah. But well, it's hard to be new, to be one of the few at the beginning, because it was pretty much a club that you guys had, a a good club, but yeah, I used to just be like, why can't I do what they're doing? Because my training for law enforcement was 5 weeks long at Lackland, and we barely marched anywhere. I mean, you guys were running, and we were just like, anyway. But I know I've got a few questions about going back to RAF Woodbridge. When you were there, you got there. When did you get there?
I got there in February of 1980.
February. Okay. You got there about the time when I saw my UFO sighting then, because I saw my UFO sighting around the 23rd of February, something like that. But I was
So
already
that's when I got there.
already disgusted with my squadron and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot about yours. You hear about the one in December landing in the forest, but yours is pretty, intense as well.
Oh yeah. It's affected me. I mean, it's affected my life. The problem is who's got the mouthpiece, So that's why we started Got Aliens and a Cup of Coffee, so we can share our stories and
Right.
get.
Right.
I would say the same for you too. I mean, your story is incredible. That people should be banging on your door, but I think in time, with God, maybe God's saying, "Hey, look, it's going to take a little bit of time, but you got leverage, you've got your foot in the door, and you're not quitting. You're like, I'm just going to keep doing it."
I think that there's some people can't believe. Some do, and I know some that have seen the pictures that I took, but
yeah, I was going to get to that too.
Oh, you're talking about the other part of the story. Okay, yeah, but it's just, I mean, all the media, all the movies, everything we always see growing up is a spaceship, a saucer-looking spaceship is going to land, and there's going to be some type of a being that gets out and says, "Take me to your leader."
Mhm.
And or they always hear the joke, the little green men from Mars, or
Yeah.
or you see the other thing, the robot guy. But that's what's always been there. It's going to be a craft, and a humanoid is going to get out, and so that's what's expected. But when you see something that's not expected, it's like, no, that can't be. And
Yeah.
what I
Often,
saw
yeah.
and took pictures of is just very difficult for people to believe.
Yeah, let me see if I can actually take some of these. I did have some photos here. Let me see.
Sorry,
here.
I didn't mean that you were on something else, and I jumped forward to the that
Oh
sighting.
no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no. That was totally fine. I'm glad you did. I'm just trying to.
Another question that Larry didn't ask me, but it was in relation to Woodbridge, the lighthouse.
Yeah.
We were in the forest training. We were in there at night many, many times because our section was on the edge of the forest, where the fence line was, and our section was down there. And we used to jump the fence to run through the forest, when guys were on station, and every day somebody was jumping the fence and running through the forest. And at nighttime we do our, overland navigation stuff, and simulate that we were inserted by a helicopter and we're going over land to find a pilot that was shot down or whatever. At night in that forest, you do not see the lighthouse. When you see the lighthouse, you are out of the forest and you are much closer to the coast. Because when you're in that forest, the trees is just blocking everything. It was a thick forest and lights were not coming through from the lighthouse. Never saw it. Saw the lighthouse when we were in the North Sea, and when we were, coming back, being recovered at the where the boats would come out, but not in the forest. Didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then after the incidents in December, and that was over like 3 days, I think, was when it was 23, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
We were tasked to go into the forest and do like a sweep, just like you would do on the flight line. You walk the flight line to pick up nuts or bolts or rocks or anything. So one of the things when our drop zone was right next to the bomb dump, and we would fly over the drop zone, and we used what we call streamers. Sometimes they were small parachutes with lights on them at night. We would use, and other times in the day we would use these. They were like crepe paper streamers. They were rolled up and they had a little steel rod in it, and the length of it and the weight of it simulated a person's weight. And so we would fly over the target, and the jump master would throw a couple of them out of the airplane, and then we would circle around and watch where the streamers landed on the ground in relation to the target, and that would give us an idea of the wind direction. And so then we were able to plan from there where we were going to jump out of the airplane, so the wind would carry us to the target. And so we had some of those streamers and things like that were still in the forest and in the trees and on the ground. So they had us doing a sweep out there to clean all that stuff up, which we always did clean our stuff up. But this was just, hey, make sure, go out there and make sure there's nothing else out there.
Wow. Yeah, after the December timeframe, there was this guy named Steve LePlume, and the craft actually flew over East Gate, the back gate, and it was huge. He said it was a couple of like a football field size. I mean, and it moved slowly, and it was very, very low. I mean, it was flying like, very, very slow. And he said he looked up, and because he knew in his head that he would never see anything like that again. He said, I'm just taking it all in. And he describes it, believe it or not, it looks like an air exchange, like an air vent that's got it's like one square, and then there's another square in the middle, and then there's another one and a little one. I saw, every time I see one at the dentist office or whatnot, I look up at the ceiling and I see it, and I'm thinking, I think of Steve LePlume and his UFO that he saw. But yeah, it did come back, and there's still quite a bit of activity out there. The main thing, though, is that it had, that December timeframe had a lot of credibility because you had Colonel Halt out there. Now, why was he out there? He loved the police. He apparently, I guess his family didn't care if he stayed up all night to be outside. But and then Steve LePlume, when he had encountered it, when he saw it, he said the weirdest thing was that all of a sudden, all these officers and officers' wives and children were showing up at his gate shack because they wanted to see the UFO. It was like, it was kind of, he was thinking, this is really, really weird. It was just really off that, kind of reminds me of the movie Independence Day, when all the people are partying in Las Vegas, and then all of a sudden the thing zaps them all. It's like, you you think we're all great, having fun, and whatnot. But yeah, it was just really, really very strange. And but so I've heard some of these stories, and the nice thing about it, by getting this story out too, your story out, is that there are other people that can corroborate what happened back. Now it's like, what, almost 40, maybe 41 years. I mean, it's been a while. And because one guy, the guy Doc Rhodes, who you met on that last podcast, he told me that he was on Police 12, the main gate of Woodbridge. And I was thinking, I didn't know that. I mean, it's like little pieces, like those little itty bitty details that really So I have somebody who can corroborate it besides my partner who I was on patrol with, who was Keith Duffield. And so, you know, it just really, times like that is very, very healing. You know, you feel less alone. And I really think a lot of the folks, the weirdest thing about what happened at Rendlesham for a lot of people is that there's a lot of negative energy around it. I mean, people are backbiting, fighting, and in some cases I tell others that was normal. That was the norm back then. Everyone was assholes. It's like, you know, and I just tried to be nice, you know, that's just the way I operate. But they were like really, really, you know, if you, you know, you couldn't draw attention to yourself, or you would have been railroaded out. They would have made your life hell. Like when I saw I remember seeing the deputy commander of Colonel Thompson. I actually saw him after he died, and he was at East Gate leaning against some boxes, and he was a full bird colonel in a, you know, in a pilot suit, and he wasn't wearing his hat. And I thought, oh my God, I mean, I was just stressing out over the fact that he didn't have a hat on, because if the patrol came by, they would have yelled at me for not telling him to put his hat on. But, you know, I was just an airman. I'm like, I didn't want to go up to a full bird colonel and say, sir, put your damn hat on, you know. And then he disappeared. And then I went looking, I actually walked out into, you know, it was a perimeter road right by the, you know, right by the runway. At the time, we did not have a blast wall there. So you could see everything, you know. So I'd walk out and he was nowhere to be seen. I'm thinking, what, did he jump over the fence and run through the forest? You know, which I said, I don't think so. But so, I mean, you know, there were all kinds of different experience we had. And like that bomb dump that you were talking about, that scared the hell out of me, because I was walking I was working a midnight shift, and it was raining and it was cold and it was really not the best weather. And as I was walking there, it's something in my head flashed this, what do they call that? Like a mantid. It was like a giant 7-foot praying mantis walking on 2 feet. And, you know, and it told me not to go. It said, don't go. It pretty much said, go later when it's like daylight. And I'm like, fine, I'm going back to my gate shack, you know. And, you know, I just sat in there and listened to my cassette tape. I was listening to Broadway songs at the time. It was like, the sun will come up tomorrow, bet your bottom dollar. So I'm just like trying to be positive, but it was frightening, you know. I mean, you don't want to get those flashes in your head. And recently I was talking to this gentleman, what was his name? Michael Carter, I think. But he told me that that's what happened with him, is that he had seen a gray by his bed, and then he ended up seeing then afterwards, he was so scared. He said, I did what any man would do. I threw the blankets over my head. I don't want to see this deathly looking gray at my bedside. And he said the air was bluish and all this stuff. Well, he ended up, what happened is later on they would flash, and he had the same thing that I would have. They would put this like a flash of a picture, a little snippet of the video. Like in my case, it was showing this mantid walking back and forth. And I think he had clothes on too. I mean, he looked like he had like some kind of armor on, and, you know, but I was like, no, I'm not going back there. I don't care if he can tell me the meaning of life.
Have you had any more of those particular flashes in your mind to see that since then?
I have. So some of it lately, I have something similar that Donna has, and that's with the all of a sudden someone will tell me to say something to somebody, and those, in my mind, some people say, you got to talk to this woman and tell her that her mom wants to go. I'm thinking, shit, I don't even know this woman. But I did. I told her, and she started to cry. We were in the swimming pool. She started to cry. And then she started to hug me because apparently her mom didn't have the courage to say, that she was ready to leave this world for another. But I had an experience. I was stationed in Las Vegas up by Indian Springs. There was a dried out lake bed, and I'm sitting in one of those Connex boxes. It has all this. What's that?
I've been through that area. I know where you're talking about.
I was at the dried out lake bed right before you get to Indian Springs. There's a big lake bed, and they would have bomb drops. And my job at that time, I was out of law enforcement, so now I'm working in television production, videotaping bomb drops. And I'm sitting in this Connex box. Well, two things happened. One was I saw that some of the equipment that I was using, my sister Donna was working for the company that made the equipment. I was like, what the heck? Because I was thinking, maybe I wouldn't be out here if her corporation, Lambda Corporation, didn't make it. Then and then one day I'm sitting in there because it's the only place they have air conditioning out in the desert. The camera sites were stolen from the Germans during World War II. And so we were actually using film. We weren't really we had a few video cameras, but we weren't using that. So I'm sitting in there, and all of a sudden I get this really, really foreboding feeling that everything's gone dark outside. It's almost like I could feel like the air was being sucked out. And I was like, whatever it was so frightening. I mean, I was really scared to the point that I just got up and bolted out the door. I didn't care if I fell over or whatnot. And I opened up the door, and it was bright light. So, I mean, it was just, it was a regular day, but that feeling that came over me, and then I find out that I think kind of, let me see here, east behind the Indian Springs and the other place, I think is where Area 51 is. So I'm sure there was some connection there with that.
It's close up there.
Yeah.
We would go through Indian Springs on the way up.
Yeah. Did you go to Area 51?
We did get out there in the Nevada test site for some training.
Mm-hmm.
When we'd get out there, we'd have to wear the little dosimeters. They'd issue us a dosimeter.
Oh,
in case we picked radioactivity. I mean, I was kind of still a young and dumb guy. Just go here, go there, and I'm alone.
Well, they had us going around picking up shrapnel from the bombs, and in some cases we found out later it was radioactive. I was like, what the heck? So I eventually got off of the range. I was like, no, because this guy and I, the road signs had washed away. We had a rain. Most of us were praying for the dried out lake bed to fill up, and then we don't have to work there. But instead the roads washed away. And next thing you know, we're in this area, and the caliche is powdery. And in the midst of the caliche are these little bomblets, these little tennis ball size. And some of them are green, some of them are blue. Now here's the hitch. Most of them were green and blue. So you couldn't tell which ones were inert and which ones were explosive. I was like, oh man. So I tell the young airman who's with me, at this time I was a buck sergeant, and I said to him, you're switching places, get me out of here. We've got to get out of here. Put it in reverse. Just follow the tracks, get out of here. And I called my mom that night to say, I love you, Mom. Because, we could have had some serious damage. I mean, we had a few vehicles that the back of the pickup truck, it blew off the back. But fortunately, that didn't happen. But you just never know. I mean, and then sometimes the planes would come in and they drop the bomb, and then you'd see the bomb skip by your camera site. It skips just like it's on water, and it's like, oh my God. So I learned a lot, I mean, out there. But I was ready to, I was ready to do anything just to get off the range, because it was just, it wasn't fun. But every base I went to after Bentwaters was an okay base. I didn't have the same experience. And, it was always like, I'd look back and say, what happened at RAF Woodbridge and Bentwaters, and why did it affect me the way it did? Because, and then I find out other airmen have gone through similar experience that I have, where you get the other ones who are so, oh, I had a great time, it's wonderful, I don't see what you're complaining about. Why are you whining? I'm like, I'm not whining, but something happened out there. I mean, it physically started to change me. I mean, I put on more weight than I know what to do with, and it's just lost my stamina. I mean, I was 18, 19 years old. I got there, I was 18, turned 19, and and I lost my stamina. Who loses their stamina at that age? It was just a lot of things which, and then bright light. I was having a hard time with bright light. I was wearing sunglasses even on overcast days, which was most of the time. But you had said that you had also worked, you guys would spend a lot of time around the, on the base and in Rendlesham Forest. Did you experience anything off or kind of strange?
No, I never felt like anything was strange. There was a little house. There was this one house out in the middle of the forest. And
was that the one that was near the road, the Folly House, or is there another one you're saying?
No, there's another one. It was well off the main road. And it was, people would rent it, military people, because I know two different families that lived in it, so lived right there in the forest. I don't remember the name of the house, but we were out there all the time. We go to their house, have cookouts or
Wow.
whatever, but and nothing ever, that I felt like, I mean, at the time I wasn't looking for anything. I didn't, we weren't aware of those things, or even looking in the air and looking for something that might be odd, and running. I mean, you see.
Probably too, because you were moving, where working, standing at a gate, you kind of, that's all you do is
right.
You look, like you're watching and whatnot. And yeah, so you had mentioned again about when you mentioned about the lighthouse, you said it was being out in the forest, there's no way you could see the lighthouse lights.
Yeah, when we were in the forest itself, deep in the forest, we didn't see the lighthouse. And unless you were, like I say, closer to the coast or on the edge of the wooded areas, where there was, plowed fields or something. But inside the forest, you didn't see lights. Like that one thing on the recording, Colonel Holt says, "Here it comes again." And somebody said, "Well, that's just a light turning in the lighthouse." And I mean, if you're in the forest, you don't see it.
Yeah, it's I mean, what I saw was a bright light that looked like I thought it was a cargo plane coming in, and 3:00 in the morning. And that's the other thing too, it seems like it always happens at that hour. And I'm thinking maybe it's because people that are up at that hour have the least credibility. And so I'm thinking, if a farmer got up early in the morning and said, hey, this is what I saw, and we're like, yeah, you've been at the pub too long. And in my case, I mean, the big difference between mine and what happened out in December is that mine flew really low, like 20, 30 feet off the runway. And it flew over the base, you know, and I felt like I couldn't just ignore it. You know, I tell people, I said, you know, if I was there, I probably would have ruined the whole experience of the Rendlesham Forest incident because it was off base. And I would have said, not my jurisdiction. You know, I mean, I'm not going, you know, can't go off base. I got to leave my weapon here, you know, and, you know, there was no way. And I would have disappointed so many people. But mine flew over the base, and I was fighting with Airman Duffield to say, here, you take the radio, I take the radio. You know, we were like handing the radio back and forth. I didn't want to report it. Alan Cohen, the desk sergeant at the time, didn't like me, and he was really, really sarcastic. However, many years later, he did apologize, and I accepted his apology. So we're friends now. I love you, Alan. But back then, you were a bee. But so now let me get back onto this subject about the hiding in plain sight. Could you share a little bit what happened that you must have had your camera with you, or you had your phone with you, and where were you? And
yeah. So I had both with me. I generally always have a camera, not just a phone, if I can have it with me, because you know, besides photography, I take a lot of pictures of different things, and I've always, you know, with the television show, the Ancient Aliens and the different things that have been on for years, and I always would see pictures of a blurry, bright light, and it's a UFO, and I always in my mind was like, I'm gonna have my camera with me because one day I'm gonna see something, and I'm gonna be able to take a picture of it. So that's why one of the reasons why, you know, I had a camera with me. But so that particular day, I was in Panama City Beach, Florida, because I was giving a motivational speech over to a group. Many of them were from the base itself, Tyndall Air Force Base and the surrounding area. And so I was in a hotel in Panama City Beach, Florida, on the 22nd floor, and I was, you know, doing some push-ups. That particular day, I had a goal for the year. I had to do so many push-ups, and that day I had 500 push-ups to do. So I would do a set of push-ups, like 50 push-ups. And while I was on the balcony and I was doing my push-ups, and I was looking out and I saw this bright, you know, blob of a light out there. I could see no shape or anything with it, just a very bright flash, and it caught my eye. And maybe because of being in the military and the Air Force, you know, you see something in the air and it, you know, you just don't look away. It's something, hey, what is that?
right.
And then my first thought was, well, it must be a jet or an airplane. But then I've quickly realized, well, it's not moving, you know, across the sky horizontally or vertically or any way. And then I thought, well, it must be a helicopter. And then as I was watching it, and the lights it was the little bit of movement that it had, and the lights, which I perceived as lights. Now I don't think they were lights. I think it was part of the craft itself. It would get really, really, really bright, and then it would go kind of a dull, and then it would start over through these cycles. And I said, well, I don't think it's not an airplane. I don't think it's a helicopter. Whatever it is, it's weird. I'm going to start taking pictures. So, but I didn't really, really, really think it was something that was what it turned out to be. So I was more focused on doing my push-ups than I was on taking pictures of something. So I'd do a set of push-ups. I'd look up, well, it's still there. And I'd take some more pictures. And I'd do more push-ups. And well, it's still there. I'll do more push-ups. So this went on for, you know, an hour and a half. And then I said, well, I got to take a shower. I got out of the showers. Well, it's still there. I'll take some more pictures. So it stayed in that same general area for all that time that I was taking those pictures. And I didn't know exactly what it was at the time. I wasn't looking at the camera and enlarging it to see it at that time, taking the pictures, because I was practicing my presentation for the evening. And so when it finally, there were times when I could see the object only while wearing my sunglasses. And those times I didn't think I captured it on camera, but I've since realized that if I use different sets of lens filters, I'm able to see an object. And that's one of the first pictures. That's the picture that I submitted in my report when I first made it. I only submitted the one picture. But so I took all the pictures, I took some videos, and then then finally it was gone. It disappeared. I couldn't see it. And that was about the time when it was disappearing with my own eyesight, and I could only see it with my glasses. And so I went to the event that evening, and I asked several military people that were there from the base, from Tyndall, several of the officers that were there, the colonels and whatnot, and other people. I said, hey, did you see anything today? Are there any reports of anything? Anybody see something that was weird, a UFO? And they all looked at me and said, no, I heard anything. And while I was taking those pictures, I was on the balcony, 22 floors up. I was looking out. I said, well, I wonder if anybody else is seeing this. And I was looking out, and I could see people running around, and people on the beach, people down in the courtyard area. Nobody was looking up. Nobody was noticing it. They were playing and doing their different games and things. So as you just had that picture up there, and you can see, if you look through the different pictures,
I'm actually trying to see if I can get more up here. Let me see here.
So you see how the bright areas of the object, they move around on the object. They don't stay in one spot, and they continually change shape and intensity.
Let's see here.
And so that I relate as similar to what an octopus or a cuttlefish does when they camouflage themselves. Their whole body, the colors, the lights, the changes go across the skin of their body. And that is what's happening here.
Yeah. And I noticed like there's some interesting lines that are away from it too. Like if the front where that dark spot is, it looks like it would be like the nose of it. I don't know.
Yep,
I would looks like it's got like a pipe or something coming out of it. I don't know. Let me see what.
It's very weird. In 2019, I was put in contact with Rich Hoffman from SCU, and we communicated with emails and on the phone a few times. And he asked me to send him originals, which I did. And then he followed it up. He asked me some questions, and he said, "Yep, we can enlarge these in megapixels to 2000 or something like that." What he said, and he asked me some questions about it. He even sent me a picture of the hotel and asked me to tell him which room I was in, and the directions and everything, an angle that I was looking. And suddenly he stopped communicating with me. So I don't know what he saw or what he identified in these pictures. It's just very odd to me. He also stopped talking to the individual that is a mutual friend who introduced us to each other and connected us for these pictures. So it's just very weird. And then knowing who was on staff with him there, and now to see who came out as the chief scientist for ATIP at that time. So I think that more people than just Rich have seen these pictures, and they're not making any public comments on them. It's just
well, that's the same thing. Like during the Rendlesham Forest period, the one thing I read, I think it was the book, The Weaponization of the UFO experience over at Rendlesham Forest. It's written by John Burroughs. I got the title really messed up, but I remember the word weaponization in it. But he mentioned one thing that they were talking about was the chatter over the radio. And there was a lot of chatter with the security police radio frequencies and law enforcement frequencies. It was just going like nonstop, where the wing commander, who's, technically has oversight over everything, it was quiet. And I just think that a lot of times people don't want to have to, they don't want to have to deal with something that they, don't understand. And B, I think that they, it's all a matter of drawing attention to yourself. And I just think that a lot of the people out there, if they do have some knowledge, maybe it was they were told to let it die out.
Yeah, and also along those lines, I know I know a couple of the people that have seen these pictures. I've seen some emails that were not sent to me that mentioned these pictures. And those individuals, such as Rich and other people, they have top secret security clearances because of their jobs, maybe laboratories or wherever they work. So, there could be something to the pictures where they could not mention them because of their security clearances.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the whole thing, I mean, the one thing they drilled into us was communication security, which was, we each have a piece of the puzzle, and if we can keep everybody separated, we'll never get the full story. But it doesn't take long for some people to get wise and really get the pieces together. I mean, that's one thing I've been really surprised about in the case of my sighting. Yeah, why is it under the wire? Why is it that people don't know about it? And it's not like I haven't tried. I set up the Rendlesham Lone Ranger UFO site. I set up Lone Ranger being me because I got kicked off of the Justice for the 81st Security Police Squadron of 1980. And I was like, well, fine, I got to do it myself. And then you've got some researchers, and I don't want to go into it because I just don't want to give them any airtime, who are taking over the narrative. They're taking over the narrative, and they're getting the narrative wrong. And that just bugs the hell out of me. I feel like, why aren't people vetting? If you want to talk to somebody, look at your source, and because you got people like you, me, so many other people out there that were there, had their feet on the ground, and were, in your case, not all the time because you were jumping out of helicopters at that time. But, it was, we were there. But apparently people don't want to hear from experiencers, which is really weird, because I think also there's been a lot of information that has, hold on one second. 2:30, 2:35, 2:30 is the limit too. Okay, gotcha. Okay. So the other piece I was just going to say was the, God, I hate when people interrupt me, then I don't remember. Where were we before I got?
I think we were talking about, vetting people that, were on the ground or were there versus someone that's a researcher and changing the narrative based on what they think.
And I'm not against researchers and people like that. I'm just against the ones that don't correct people, that don't, that people that lead you to believe something, and if you jump to a conclusion, they're not going to stop you from that conclusion. So, and to me, you know, if you said something about me and you said, well, you were there during December 1980 RFI, and I would say, no, I wasn't there. I was home in New York at Christmas time. I had PCSed already. And it's real important that we keep our story honest and truthful. But it's affected me. I mean, I'm still always wondering what happened out there and why it lingers. And I think
For you, you're talking about your story, your event.
yeah,
Are you talking about the December event as well?
yeah, no, all of it, all of it. I
All
mean,
of it.
you know,
Yeah.
listening to the pieces, the people that want to get the story out, and it's not just, you know, one researcher and Burroughs, Peniston, and Halt. I mean, I appreciate their stories so too, but you know, after a while, you got to say, can we zoom out a little bit and see the rest of it? Because there's so much more to the story. You know,
I think, you know, that December event in Rendlesham Forest, December of '80, wasn't just one event, right? It was over at least 3 days with
yeah.
many people, many different people that were out there. So was there one person that was out there for every event, or was there different people spread out? So their encounters are going to be a little bit different with each night or each one of them.
Yeah, and not only by each night, it's what people perceive during the incident. I mean, what Jim Peniston, the first night, it was Jim Peniston, it's like 3 or 4 people, and he experienced one thing, and John Burroughs experienced something completely different. And then you've got this other person on the side looking at John Burroughs and seeing him kind of fade out. So he faded out, and then he came back like 5 minutes later. And then, you know, but Jim Peniston, he's there and he actually physically sees the craft. John Burroughs doesn't see the craft, but you know, but he was definitely affected by it. So it's that interesting that these pieces, even at the actual event, had everyone had a different reality of what was going on. So yeah.
You know,
Isn't that weird? I mean, like,
it is weird.
Yeah, if you went up to a, you know, they both felt the static electricity coming from it, you know, they all felt like they were walking through like really thick jello, I guess. And I'm guessing on that one, but I'm thinking that they said as they got closer, it was harder to walk, to get near it. And then, you know, so Jim Peniston got the ones and zeros. Recently, we got another person who got, he had, what's his name, Stacy Smith. He was also a different UFO sighting. I think it was November of his 1980, and he witnessed these orbs out in Rendlesham Forest, these big, and they came really close to him. And he ended up having information put in about a place called St. Michael's in England, and apparently there's a relationship between the coordinates there and the place where there were coordinates from Jim Peniston, who is this, I guess, an island that's kind of underwater. It's Brazil, something or other. And while that's going on, I'm having these dreams. What's that?
Hi, Brazil, I think is what he called it.
Yeah, thank you. And me, I'm having these dreams about this place called the Zone of Silence in Mexico. And all of these places, and I've never been there, and you know, showed up in a dream. I had no idea where it was until I got a complimentary copy of National Geographic. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? I mean, it was just, you know, and it wasn't just like, oh, look at this place. Yeah, I know this place. I know that body of water. In fact, in my dreams, I'm walking in it, you know, and I could tell you it's salty water and it's clear and the sand is white, but it's, it's almost like I know something the way Richard Dreyfuss on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when he was building that mountain out of mashed potatoes, he knew it was something more. And it was like, trying to put your finger on it. And I think anytime you have a UFO sighting, to include the ones that you had looking out, I'm sure it gave you information. You may not know it yet, but I do think that
I
definitely
believe that too.
adds to your journey.
Yeah,
And I think,
me and I would say last year, two other the guys I was stationed with at Woodbridge were still friends. And we climbed together. We went to Devil's Tower and climbed it. It was just that experience. I was like, man, am I going to see something up here when we get to the top? But
yeah,
it was just it was barren. There was something up there, but it was a rock pile and a stick. We had a book inside like a ammo can. You sign your name that you made it to the top. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
that's really cool. Have you ever thought about climbing Mount Everest or anything like that?
I've thought about it, but that Mount Everest is out of my league. That probably will never happen. Plus, the expenses of it are gigantic to climb Mount Everest. But next couple of weeks, those same two guys, Rod and Kurt, we are linking up to climb the Grand Teton.
Oh, wow.
In the Grand Tetons, we're going over there in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna do,
wow. Yep. And I'm trying to think. So have you been going to any conferences or?
I only did last year the one online with SCU, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was very strange that some of the people in SCU that I spoke to had no idea about the pictures, and Rich himself did not acknowledge me at all. Wow. So I just thought that was just kind of
that was telling.
Very odd.
Yeah. No, that was incredible. I kind of feel like we've touched the tip of the iceberg between your story and my story and Donna's story. There's probably a whole lot more to delve in, especially, you having that near-death experiences. I actually have walked into rooms. I was working in the insurance field before COVID, and I'd walk into this room. This woman comes up to me and says, "Oh, my mom needs some life insurance." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, that's what I do." So I walk in her room, and the lighting in the room was completely warm. It was, like you said, like it was a white light, but it was really just a warm, like everything was kind of yellowish, but it felt just like a really nice warmth. And all of a sudden, again, I got the flash in my head, and I saw these three giant angels. I don't remember wings, but they were really big, and their clothes weren't really that white. They were kind of dirty. I kind of looked at them as they were the ones that their job was to escort people to the next realm, which to me said, that is really nice that you don't die alone. I realized that. So I decided, instead of just knowing they were there, and I was looking at the woman sitting there, and I knew there's no way she would get life insurance. She was dying. And I said to her, because I was curious, I said to her, "Can you tell me, is this room crowded with angels?" And she just nodded like, "Yeah." And she had this really serene smile on her face. And I knew it. So about a week later, well, it was so weird because right before I left, I kissed her on top of the head and kind of like feeling my love with her, as a connection, even though I didn't know her at all. And I found out a week later she had passed away, about 2 days later. And I asked them, "Do you mind if I walk into that room again?" Because I was just curious again to know if the room still had that same atmosphere, and it didn't. It was one of these places for poor people, and it was very institutional. And when I went into the room, it was bare. There was no warmth to it. It felt like like walking into a classroom. It didn't have, it was just so fascinating to me that I had the opportunity to witness that. So I do think that through what you've gone through is you probably have more gifts than you realize, but I do believe you're on the right road, especially being an inspirational speaker.
Just to be able to share that story, God is real.
God is real. Yeah, absolutely. I think Donna would be happy to hear that. And she usually likes to end with a prayer. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Not I'm so good at saying prayers. Just
Yeah, I'm kind of.
Thank you for all the blessings that I have received in life, and friends and family, and stay healthy and just give me the strength and the knowledge to do what you want me to do and carry on.
Absolutely. That's right. Carry on, rock on. Now, this is God, Aliens, and a Cup of Coffee.